Hello, and thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Mike Tellerino. I am going to be your host for tonight's podcast. Tonight, I got a really special guest, Cheryl Mabry. Did I get that right?
You did.
Chalk one up for me. Anyway, we're going to be talking about yoga and the effects that it has on veterans and first responders and how it could help them. But first, Cheryl, let's give the audience a little bit of background on you.
Well, thank you for the introduction. And hello, everyone. I am so honored to join this community of supporters and those that are challenged with post traumatic stress or an interest in what we know and how we do it. I am a civilian. I am the daughter of a Navy veteran, and I have spent a lifetime prior to my father's passing in 2016, but so much after in trying to understand and better equip myself in interacting in a population that means so much to me. I grew up, as I said, the daughter of a Navy veteran, and my dad was struggling. He was in Vietnam. He fought a lot of chronic physical stress, emotional stress. He struggled in communication. We butted heads a lot, as you can imagine. And he spent his life in his later years supporting our local veterans. He did everything from the American Legion and, supporting the bar as a manager. He hosted every
Right.
event. He went to the schools and told kids about his experience and why our veterans were important. And when my dad passed, my husband's half brother joined Chicago Police Department, and he's like, "Hey, I went through this academy course called Yoga for First Responders." And I was a yoga teacher since about 2003. And I was finding the benefits in my own life. And I said, well, gosh, if this makes the connection of what I noticed that benefits me and the corporate high stress community I was serving, maybe there's a connection here and maybe there's a way to honor my dad and so many others. So I quickly did a Google search. What is this yoga for first responders? I got on an email list, a Facebook group. I did everything and said, where do I go to train? You want me for 60 hours and 6 days? What is that? I had already studied 500 hours. I was a trained teacher. What else did I need to know? Holy smokes. I flew from Chicago to Seattle. I trained right alongside of a class of about 50. Half of them were first responders, from dispatchers to police officers, fire service, and holy cow, I think we had jail-based law enforcement. And then some of us were civilians, some of us were yoga teachers, and we got to learn the neurological side of stress. We got to understand the benefits of yoga. We got to break down, as we're going to do tonight, some of the misconceptions and why it is for this population. And I left those 6 days, those 60 hours, a changed person. I
Really?
didn't realize the study I had done in yoga on myself, the science behind what it was doing to me and how I was benefiting. And I was like, okay, I can't unlearn this. And I know I've gone on, but that has been now my practice for 5.5 years. It's the types of classes that I teach and educate, whether people are first responders, whether they're military veterans, or they're everyday people that don't understand how stress impacts our body mentally, physically, emotionally, and how it affects our future living. I
I
don't know
guess.
if that answers your question.
Oh yeah, yeah, it did. Great. I guess before we start talking about yoga and first responders and veterans, I due to my ignorance, I didn't think that would have any effect on PTSD because I really didn't know much about yoga and what it actually can do. But after meeting with you and talking with you, I looked into it, and it has so many advantages. I mean, I've been talking to our veterans about it, that we're going to do this podcast, and and I was just telling them that before I started looking into it, I never thought of all the upside that yoga has for PTSD. It's just amazing. It really is.
Well, and just as you described, our founder, Olivia Mead, made that same connection, right? She began working with veterans with no arms and no legs, and they were working on mastering their mind, the power of our thoughts, the number one machine that we all have, and how much maintenance do we give it? And I was fascinated to understand that it wasn't about standing on my head. It wasn't about, touching my toes or the kind of pants I wore. And that's really what, if we all did a Google search right now, we'd find why some of those misconceptions are there, why we think that there isn't a link. And really, my goal in every population I walk into is helping people bridge that gap, to open their mind, be curious enough to see that there is a connection. I'm so glad that you found that in a very short time since we met on Veterans
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah, like I said, I was amazed by the different things that it could help you with and stuff. Mental health, as we know with PTSD, these veterans and first responders, they're in a really difficult place. They really are, and anything we could do to help them get through the day, and not have a PTSD flashback like our veterans typically do that
Mhm.
served in combat. And it's just an amazing what this could do for them. Why don't you tell us how the program starts out? If somebody's interested in becoming involved in your program, what are the steps?
Well, it's a super question. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take a couple steps back because I wanted to
Mhm.
address something that you said. I, like you, had the idea that this was based on people that had seen and experienced things that I would never. The
Right,
understanding that what a first responder or veteran sees and experiences in their lifetime, I may see one or two traumatic instances in my whole life, whereas they may see 10 or 11 in a year or in 5 years. That big difference, so to speak. But what I learned is that the way our brain and our nervous system works, this is the science stuff that I start geeking out on, is that our brain and our body doesn't know the difference from reality or perception. So
right,
if we perceive fear or we experience actual fear, say for our life, the body and brain doesn't know the difference. That means I could do something as simple as watch a scary movie and be just as I struggle to use the word triggered, but experience fear. And I don't know it's any different. So that could be chalked up to experiencing a traumatic incident. But the interesting fact is that whether it's one critical incident or a lifetime of small stressors, the chemical response that happens within those different moments is the same. We can literally have an accumulation of small little stressors. What we've heard, the death by a thousand cuts analogy, and it allows the body to experience the same as maybe one traumatic incident. I was like, that in itself shocked me. So then I went back in my own life because I thought, how can I relate when I speak in a program? Back to your initial question of how do I walk in the door and build trust with a group of people that says you haven't been what I've been through. And I could say, okay, so I actually fractured my spine in two places multiple times. It was a progression of 20 plus years of back problems. There was chronic stress, that hormone cocktail dumping in my body that I was never at ease, right? So the opposite of ease is dis-ease. And
right,
disease was constantly going. I finally had a surgery, which then my body experienced another traumatic incident where they fixed my spine, put some titanium screws in a cage, and then there was this period of
mhm,
rehab. And I was asked the question, why are you not angry? How is it you're managing? And I thought, well, I don't know. I never thought to be angry that something like that happened to me. Fast forward studying with yoga for first responders, I was like, wait, I was continually moving, breathing, and talking to myself differently. So I had literally been preparing for those stressful events so
right,
that once a new one happened, the training kicked in. And I know that's something we're going to talk about, like how this creates cohesiveness within ourselves and then within a team. That was something that, wow, I was building. Fast forward 2 years ago, I had a tragic car accident. And immediately my training of the last 5 years kicked in. And I said, I need to breathe. I need to stay coherent in order to communicate with my first responders. I need to do a body scan and what has happened to me. And they showed up at my door and they said, why are you so calm? And I thought, I'm always going to fall to the level of my training. And the fact that I utilize these skills each and every day, they came when I needed them most. And it also allowed the people that showed up to help me better. So all that to say is, how do I walk in the door and say, hey, by the way, how is yoga for you? As I usually start asking questions like, what's challenging right now? And if a department or an agency decides, like, what do we want to explore? Michael, you saw it. I shared a packet with you. I shared some information about what yoga is, what it isn't, and how it does impact. Give you a little taste of it. And then if somebody wants to know more, I usually come in with an info session. Everyone thinks yoga is physical movement, but there's a lot more to it. And I'm not going to ask anybody to sit in a chair and experience breath and movement or put them on a mat if they don't first understand why we're here.
The principle of it.
Yeah,
Right.
the intention of what we want to practice. If I say I want to touch my toes, that might be an outcome, but I'm actually there as we train in yoga for first responders to process stress, to build resilience, and to enhance my performance on or off a job, on or off real life. So hopefully that answers your question of like, where do
Yeah.
we start? We have a
No,
conversation
it's good.
around need.
What do you feel are for a veteran who experienced a traumatic experience in combat? What do you think the best part of yoga is for them to help them deal with the stressor of PTSD?
It's such a great question, and it often when I hear it asked, it sounds so big. And where do we even start? Right? And my first initial response would be, we all know how to breathe, but someone doesn't always give us a skill to bring our brain, our body, and our nervous system in sync. My understanding, the basic understanding of post traumatic stress is that when our brain has, as you mentioned, maybe a thought from the past, our nervous system then is responding emotionally, chemically to that original incident or multiple incidences. However, my physical body is living here. So the disconnect that we've just described is that our brain is over here, our chemical response and our emotions are over here, but the physical body lives here. They're not together.
Right.
And so if we can train with something as simple as breath work, I'm going to ask you, let's breathe together. And so, hey, we can do this right now. I'm sitting in my chair. I'm actually going to put both feet on the floor so that they're right underneath my knees. My back is away from my chair, and I'm just going to pay attention to how I'm breathing. So if anyone's listening or you catch the recording, tap into, are you nose breathing or mouth breathing? You don't even have to tell anybody. You just notice what's happening. For me, I'm a nose breather. So if I said, I'm going to breathe in and I'm going to breathe out, that's a quick hack to paying attention on purpose and in the moment.
Does that help with the anxiety that they're feeling at the time? So if they do this breathing exercise, that'll help reduce that anxiety that they're experiencing?
It's certainly one technique, absolutely. But I find that when I ask, a lot of my work is with law enforcement. So when I ask a police officer to stand still or sit still and breathe, how well do you think that goes? And I will tell you, I'm never going to ask you to close your eyes. We've tailored this protocol so that it's very job specific and culturally informed. So I could simply fixate my gaze on the light switch that's on my wall or notice something that's pleasing. But the focus is I'm going to breathe in and I'm going to breathe out. And usually 2 or 3 breaths and the mind's going to wander. So oftentimes I'll layer that in by saying, I'm going to count to 3. I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. I'm literally commanding my brain to be doing what I'm doing. And then we got to practice it. It's like brushing your teeth. Do we all of a sudden have a great oral health because we did it one time? Or do we do it every day, a
Right.
couple of times a day? And we rarely have any emotion or anxiety around brushing our teeth. Because
If a veteran is having, a lot of our veterans have sleep deprivation because they don't want to drift off to that bad place, and I get it. Um, how would this help them relax enough to go to sleep? Would that help prevent their night terror?
I'm certainly not a medical professional. And I love the question. I look at yoga as one of many tools. I do find that in the populations that I train, and even in myself, what I understand about the nervous system is that every time that we go from, say, I'm going to use my hands here, right? There's a baseline. There is a place that we live that we're at ease. Our systems are off, and all functions of the body, like resting, digesting, fertility, they're all happening, and they're happening naturally. But there's that point of when fear kicks in, when there's an emotion that triggers that, the system then gets escalated. And just before we came on air today, we talked about how whether it's police or fire, a dispatcher, right? All of a sudden that call comes in, it's like, oh, you know, I get activated. And then just when I maybe start to come down a little bit, I get another activation, right? So I did a ride along on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 calls in 6 hours. There was never a return to baseline because it was call after call after call after call. So when the nervous system is here and it trains to be here over whether it's a career in military or it's a career as a first responder, there's no training to come back to baseline. And what I learned is that there are 2 or 3 ways that it happens. 24 to 48 hours to actually come down and recover. Well, most people, if they're in that anxiety state, don't have 24 to 48 hours where they're not bombarded by something, let alone somebody that's in one of these first responder modes,
Right.
right? So we take that off the table. We look at wildlife and how they regulate, because somehow I don't know any wild kingdom animal that has post-traumatic stress or anxiety. Maybe it lives there, but they have this beautiful response of tremoring. Maybe you've seen a dog do it.
Right.
They will shake out the stress. Well, nobody says, hey, it's okay to shake because we are concerned about what
Right.
everyone else is thinking of us. But shaking, tremoring, tapping, there's a lot of different techniques that are really helpful for those with anxiety. And breath work is one that teaches us to come back to that baseline and really allow for sleep to happen, digestion to happen. And so I really believe that it's a training of, if I train myself to down regulate, not relax, because we know what we do to relax, but we want that down regulation so that the body does have the ability. The mind says, okay, now it's time to sleep.
Hmm.
Answer your question?
What do you think the biggest misconception? You got a veteran who is struggling with PTSD. You got police officers and firemen, but I think I don't. For myself, when I thought of yoga, I thought, oh, it's just a girly thing. Sorry, I did. I thought,
I love your honesty. Bring it.
what am I gonna do with yoga? How's that gonna help me? I mean, you know, um, but the more I got into it and more after reading the material that you sent me, it does have so many different aspects of help that I would have never thought it does. And so when I was mentioning it to our veterans that I was doing this podcast tonight, and they said, Michael, yoga? I said, yeah, well, let me tell you a little bit about yoga first before you turn your nose up and think, that's a little girly thing or whatever. and how it could help you. And they were looking forward to looking more into it because they're all looking for that stress relief.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it best, Michael. You took the time. You came in meeting me in person and you allowed yourself to be open and curious. And if that's the first thing that we look for, is that and building trust. You have an audience that trusts you. They know that you have a passion to help, to offer tools. And by you doing that, you become an amazing resource. And that's really my goal, but I don't know your audience.
Right.
They
Are there different styles and different techniques that apply for different forms of PTSD and TBI?
I don't know that I can speak to styles. My understanding is that we all have the same nervous system. And the idea that we have genetics and epigenetics. We all know what genetics are, right? They're the what we got from mommy and daddy. And so a lot of times our belief that something is or isn't for us, back to what you said, is this girly or is this going to help me? And
Right.
so when I understood that epigenetics is our environment, our food, our thoughts, we literally can change the structure of our brain. And the analysis that I have a little bit of knowledge in what post traumatic stress looks like in the brain is we weren't necessarily born that way. Maybe some folks are, but those are trained or learned responses. The exciting part is that we can train and learn different responses. To me, that is a breath of fresh air to know that you can actually change the function and the structure of your brain by your own hand, by a simple bit of breath work, then breathing and moving. I think the best example I have is Olivia gives it. If you've ever been in that near car crash, or you've popped around a corner and somebody startles you, what do you think your physical and mental body does? We go, ugh.
Right.
There's a freeze of our breath, there's a tightening of our body, and there's a chemical response that, whew, okay, I got out of that. Wow, I can't
Right.
believe. And then there's usually this like few deep breaths. Maybe there's that little shake a
Come
little bit.
down.
Yeah. So there's that chemical response. Either we move and breathe to process those chemicals out, or they pause, they live, and they lock us up just like that moment. And so when I had my car accident 2 years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to store this stuff chemically. I want to process it out. So I chose subtle movements, slow breath, and talking to myself, I'm okay, I am safe, I am healing. And those words, those breaths, those movements over time have allowed me to heal and function.
Hmm.
It wasn't, a one and done. So, do I believe there's different styles? There's different techniques for tactical breath work, some that can energize and bring us up for those that struggle with depression. There's also techniques for breathing and slowing down that anxiousness. So, those are wonderful to introduce and get to know in what's going to serve different people. But there's 2 or 3 basic breathing techniques I teach in every program. And that might be a 1 to an 8 hour in service training that
Right.
educates people. This is what you can use daily for, getting to a baseline. Here's a nice recovery breath. If you notice you're getting a little activated, you can slow down that exhale. I say it's an in 3, out 5, if anybody's taking notes. And something as simple as that is going to serve when you notice that creep up. But that's the big thing, is the awareness. Like, do I notice when it happens? And am I willing to pivot in that moment? Maybe not perfectly, maybe not every time, but can I stop, challenge my old response, and then choose a different one?
How do you measure your success rate with people that initially come into your class that's never taken any yoga? How long it typically is before you can see, and I know it's hard, but how can you see, how long does it take to see any marked improvements? Do they tell you?
Oh my gosh. I think we could go a lot of directions with how quickly we're going to get a benefit. I know that I've asked a class of primarily folks that have never experienced yoga before, and maybe we can do it on here one night. Somebody that might wear one of these devices that shows blood pressure or heart rate, right? And if you're in that anxious state, you can do something as simple as 2 to 3 minutes of breathing and down regulate and see a difference in your heart rate and in your blood pressure. So if we can regulate that heart rhythm, if we can bring regulation to our thoughts, you can see it pretty quickly. The goal is, how do we train the system that defaults to our old way? I'm 51, so I've got 51 years of learning.
Yeah.
So those of us that, are challenged, if post-traumatic stress has been with you for days or weeks or months or years, it's, are you willing to put in the work? Do you see the upside and the benefit to putting in the work? And I mean, I just happen to see the questions coming in. Will this help with severe anxiety? My belief is yes. My challenge would be, are you willing 2 to 3 times a day to do a breath work? And the beautiful thing is, Yoga for First Responders has an app that is available for anyone to use. It has 2, 3, 5 minute, 10-minute breath work, as well as short 10, 15, 60-minute classes. There's a free portal that many people can use. There's also a paid portion. Some agencies will have, raise funds for it. Others will pay for it, but it's super inexpensive. And it's one of the best tools that I have found for myself, as well as so many veterans, non-veterans, civilians, and first responders that utilize it.
Typically, how long is a class?
And again, it goes back to, if you want to just do 3 to 5 minutes of breath because that fits in your schedule, you can do that. Moving and breathing, I oftentimes will do 12 or 15 minutes because that's what works for me to start my morning. But you might find that, okay, today I need 60 minutes. Okay, that's available too. So you have options.
Hmm.
It's never I don't have an hour to get on my mat, so I can't do it. That takes a change of thought. That takes a curiosity of, wait, I can do something for 3 to 5 minutes. Is it going to have an impact on my nervous system and my anxiety? Yes. But your belief is 100% of what's going to make the change or not.
It's just the more I learn about this, and the more I can see the advantages there are. And again, I would have never thought. Believe me, it just never put two and two together with yoga and depression and anxiety and PTSD and but you've had a lot of success with the people that you worked with to get over them, to overcome their anxiety and PTSD, that it's because of what you taught them how to deal with their inner self.
That's a great observation, and how you articulated it. I look at yoga as growth and learning for myself. It is a simple tool. And as I began to serve the populations within Yoga for First Responders and beyond, our veterans, our military, our first responders, it became less about the physically hard movements I did and how I managed myself. And I believe that that's possible for everyone that says, okay, where I'm at now is not where I want to stay. And if I understand that accumulation of stress over time is going to lead me toward chronic disease, and I get a choice. I heard at every conference I went to, hey, this is a problem. We have a mental health crisis. It's all about critical incidents. We have to wait to talk to somebody. We either, raise our hand and we get a red flag, or we call an 800 number. And after hearing that over and over again, I was like, well, wait, yoga for first responders is a tool that if somebody's not there yet, if their brain is still in that loop, this is something they could do everywhere and anywhere. Nobody has to
I
know.
think it's a great outlet. I think it could do nothing but, anything we could do to help our veterans get through and first responders to get through the struggles that they're going through. And this is such a natural thing. It's not, you're not taking a pill, to overcome your anxiety or depression or whatever. This basically helps your all around attitude, and you're doing it on your own, not chemically induced.
Agreed. 100%. I mean, most of what I describe in our lecture portion is really about when we look to relax, if I use that word right, how many of us, what do we choose? I could ask people to pop it in the chat, right? And we might think vacation, we might think massage, we might think alcohol or substances. Everything tends to be outside of us. And for those that are working, I don't know about you, I can't do any of those things when I'm working, or I shouldn't.
Right.
It's going to impact other people. And if I'm in dysregulation, I'm not really of good use to myself. I'm a danger to other people. And so knowing that you can utilize these techniques, these tactical breathwork skills, the cognitive declaration, I can declare something over how I'm already talking to myself to create a different outcome. And that can be done in the morning, between calls, between people I interact with, before I go to bed. Like, there's always an opportunity
Right. Right.
if that's helpful.
I just think it's such an
Empowering.
amazing tool
Yeah.
that people just didn't think about or don't think about it. And it's pretty effective from what I read from the literature that you sent me. Your success rate is if people wanted to learn more about how you could help them specifically, where would they go to get more information on you?
So I am here. I will give you guys my email address. You will have my phone number. You can get it through, contact me through Michael. But I specifically live in Illinois. So just something I wanted to put out here, if this is important. These programs and these classes, again, if I come to you for an hour or a 4-hour training, we customize it. I'm always going to give you the information about what yoga is, what it isn't, and give you some practical application. So this is never you just listen to some information. We're going to put it to work for you. And what I love is that the state of Illinois actually accredits our training for officer wellness. So anyone that maybe you have a family member that is a first responder, they can actually, part of their 20 hours of needed credits each year.
Is any of this covered by insurance?
Not that I'm aware of. We do a lot of funding. I've done a lot of voluntary work as well as paid work. I know some organizations, I do some work with Tri River Training, and a lot of their programs are little to no cost to different agencies because of fundraising. I think somebody in the chat had asked, hey, what if we want to use the app? How much is that? And as I mentioned, there's a free portion. I'd have to look at what the cost is annually. I think it's maybe around $50 if you wanted access to all the classes. But there's also some free programming that's being done throughout the week. So all of that, again, is customizable. But, I can come in and speak at a VFW, and we could organize a class that's for families of or veterans in particular, and see what that looks like to introduce the technique, and then how do we practice further.
Do you have a physical location where you do this at?
I come to you. That's
That's
the best part. The goal is, if I asked a veteran or first responder to come in a yoga studio, I'm not saying that some people don't practice, and there are phenomenal programs out there, but this is really neurological health and fitness, right? It's not quite the norm for some folks. And if I advertise it on a flyer, hey, come and check your nervous system. not a lot of people would sign up because it's not as exciting as what you said. Females in tight pants, maybe sipping pumpkin spice lattes, as the joke goes. We're breaking that stigma. And it's conversations like we're having today from trusted sources like you that say, oh, you're going to show up in a place I feel safe and teach me something that's going to help me save me.
You know what I'd like to do, and I know we only have like 5 minutes left,
Okay.
but what I'd like to do, we have a training class in Joliet and in Chicago where we have maybe 5, 6, 7 veterans there training. I'd like to maybe invite you there to maybe do it. I don't know if you could do it, a little demonstration, a little talk to them. And I want you to educate them a lot more than I can about this because I really think it's got a lot of substance to it. And I think it could be another tool and any other tool we could use to where we're not taking a pill or an injection or whatever to, cope with our PTSD or traumatic brain injury. I think that's a win, win, win. These veterans, they're on enough pharmaceutical pills every day dealing with their PTSD. And if this could help them reduce that amount and help them with their stress level and their anxiety, I think it's a win win. I really do.
I agree with you 100%. And my work outside of yoga for first responders is as a holistic health coach. So my whole goal is to educate people around healthy choices. Maybe that's what we take in through our eyes, what we listen to, the food that we eat, because all of it has a chemical response in our body and our brain and our nervous system. And like you said, if we can bring that in a happier state, so to speak, in a more, a calmer rhythm, then
Right.
oftentimes I see many of my clients
How
reduce.
do you overcome the opposition?
Mm. I ask good questions. I show people that I care and I give them science backed information. We have research studies now that are showing the benefits for post traumatic stress, the healing that happens in our brain, and the benefit of actually training with these protocols that actually, I'm struggling for the word here, forgive me, um, helps with future incoming stress. The body's then going to
Right.
take it in differently than it used to. So rather than it piling up, I think of like a junk drawer, right? If you just keep adding to it and you never go through any of it or process it out, it's gonna pour out at some point. So our goal is, hey, let's take that out one bit at a time. So you actually have room for we know the future stress is coming. So
I
why
am
not
gonna I
plan?
am gonna add your name, number, and contact information. And this is how much I believe in it that I'm gonna add it to our website for our veterans that if they're looking to get some help that isn't typically out of the norm, that this is something that they really need to look into because I'm totally impressed with you and the effects that it has on our and again anything that we could do to help our veterans that we're not shoving a pill down their throat to make them feel better or get through the day. This seems more natural.
100%. Our body is so brilliant. It's 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 seeking ease. It's seeking regulation. And as we insert all of these, if we use toxicity as an idea, right? Most of the substances that we're adding in, even if there's to help us, usually has some toxicity. No different than food, no different than people. So I really look at how I seek to help people, whether they choose a health program with me, whether they chose a yoga program with me, is let's look at you as a whole person. And what's your goal? If your goal is to reduce and eliminate medications, then let's work on that one breath at a time.
Exactly.
I would love to be a trusted resource for your community. I know you said we don't have much time. Should we look through the questions? Is there something specific that I could answer in the chat? And how important is that for you? Or if we do it later?
I think what you're doing is amazing. And I think anything you could do to help our first responders and our veterans. And I think it's just a more natural thing and a more natural way to do it. I'm all for it. Like I said, after reading the material that you sent me, I just was just taken back by all the benefits. And I would have never thought yoga. I thought, oh, that's for girls. Don't want to
Well,
do that.
now that we can override that thought, we don't have to articulate it anymore. You or our audience, please, those of you coming through Facebook, log on to the Yoga for First Responders page. There's always information. We have training classes that are out there.
Do you want to give your contact information now, or you want to tell them to go to our website and then when I put it up there?
What's easier for your community? Are
Oh,
people
I think
are
we
they
need.
gonna you can Google or
I
you
think we need to get it out there.
sure
If you
you
just
can
want to
search
give
my
a
name.
email or a Facebook page. Do you have
Yep,
a Facebook page?
I have a Facebook page. You're gonna see
Why
me under
don't we
my
give
name
them
right
your Facebook page,
here.
and I guess from there they can get more information
I'm
on
gonna
how to
see
contact you.
here, let's do this. Can you still see me, Michael? I have something called a link tree, and it has all of my contact information. I just need you guys back up visually so I can give it to you. Oh my goodness. I have lost our video. Can you still see me, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I just need to not be lost. There we go. Where can I put it? In the chat?
Yeah, you can put it right in the chat.
Okay. Let's see if I can do
I don't even see. I can't even see.
that. It says
Oh, okay.
connect me to YouTube. I don't want to connect to YouTube. I just want to join the chat. All this technology, even you can be on the podcast. So it's asking me to jump into YouTube. But anyway, I have a link tree. It's going to give you my Facebook, my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my phone number, my
Good.
email. It gives me
Put
all
it
the.
on after the podcast and put it on in the comment section. Kate McGrill, our trainer. Um, I even talked to her about this, and she said, she would love to have you at one of our classes, talk to our veterans, maybe do a demonstration or whatever you typically do to help show the advantages there are to yoga. And again, I'd have never thought.
Hmm. Well, I can also give you guys a QR code that's going to allow you into
Yeah,
the app
put
that YFFR
put
uses.
put that
That's
on the
those
comment
free
section.
classes. So I'll make sure you guys have that as well. A link to that. So that's two things. I am just flipping through here. Oh, I'm actually doing an empowering yoga class utilizing these techniques at my local library. So I'm in the Lansing, Illinois community. If anybody's nearby, you can look on the Lansing Library website. There's a class once per month, once a year in December, the 11th, and another in January that you can come meet me in person, jump in the class. It's
Just put your contact information because a lot of people that I've talked to, they want to know more. I want to thank you for being my guest tonight, and just thank you for enlightening me and everybody else as to all the benefits that most people wouldn't think are available for taking a yoga class. It's just really a good thing. I mean, God bless you for what you're doing with our first responders. It's an amazing thing. Thank you.
well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being open to
You
exploring
know,
in this community because it has enhanced relationships in my life. It's allowed me to know me better. And I witness it in others. I witness the open mindedness in the first responders I deal with, those that are saying, oh my gosh, I didn't think this was for me. Yes, I'm going to keep practicing. Yes, I want to keep the breathing because wow, I feel better. Somebody called me a yoga ninja one time. They
yeah,
were like, you made me do some really hard stuff, but yet I feel relaxed. How did you do that?
right.
And I just applaud everyone because you do the work. I'm just here as a facilitator. So again,
Well,
honored to be with all of you.
Again, thank you for doing what you're doing for our first responders and our veterans, and keep doing what you're doing because it's working.
Absolutely.
God bless
I
you
look
and thank
forward
you.
to our connection further, and I'll share that
We'll
information.
be we'll be working together. I got that feeling. So
Perfect.
God bless you. Have a great evening and thank you so much.
Thank you.